back here, and this is my third video in my linoleum printing from beginning to end. Originally I wanted to do it all as one video. The first one was taking too long, and I realized I gotta break it up into 2 videos. And then I did the second video, and just more things happened than what I was planning on. So what ended up happening was I'm taking that and I'm breaking it down into another video. So I'm gonna have 3 videos for this series, which is fine, but it's just the second one also got too long. It was about 45 minutes almost, which is really long to watch a YouTube video, I think. So I did not want to keep it. I almost want to break it up again, but I'm not going to. But I am breaking it off. So in the last video, I left off with all my proofing. In this video, we're going to do my editioning. And what editioning is, for those of you who do not understand, is when a printmaker makes a bunch of prints, they create an edition. Or it's called an edition, I should say. And it's basically a set number of prints that you make, and then you put your name on it, you put your title, and you can put the date if you so choose, or the year, or whatever you want to put, and then you put a number of the edition. Now, some people do not do that. They put a number down, and that's what I've been doing lately. Is I normally do an edition of 32. I just know because I break down my paper, and it comes down to 32 sheets with a certain set of papers, and then I just, after they're dried and printed, I just numbered 1 to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up to 32. Now some people will do 1 of 32. I just do 1, and then when I get to 32, I sign 32. I do that just in case I need to do more prints. I can. Now, I'm not a high-selling artist by any means, so more than likely I'm not going to be doing more than my first edition. But some of my early ones definitely have 1 of 5. I mean, an edition could be as small as just 1 print, like if you're doing a mono print, or you know, if you're doing like a lithography, you could do hundreds, even thousands of prints off a plate sometimes. So it all depends on what you're doing, but that's simply what an edition is. It has the number of the prints that you did, your title of your product, of your project, or your piece of art, I should say, of your print, and then your name on it. And some people will write the year on it or not, or even just date it completely too. I don't date mine anymore. I just don't do it. But anyways, I am going to go ahead and show you guys how I do everything else, from my soaking to my tearing to hanging it up and everything else in between. So let's get started on that, guys. Alright, everyone. I do not have a large enough space in my apartment to do this, or at least large enough flat surface to do this, and this is just me tearing paper. So I get my sheets of paper, and I have 3 sheets of Stonehenge here. This happens to be their newer steel gray, which I actually like this quite a bit. Now, standard paper, printing paper, is 22 by 30. And I know this is going to be 30 inches. So I'm going to make a mark at 15 here, and then 15 here. And this is how I tear down my paper. Now I have a tear bar here. This one's from Pacific Arc, stainless steel, and you could see, how thick, come on, zoom, how thick this thing is. And it's got a little bevel on this side over here. It's not sharp, but I mean, it would still hurt if you hit somebody with this thing. Then you simply line it up right here. Grab one of the corners and pull. Like so. I recommend doing 1 sheet at a time, but you can do multiples. Doesn't really matter. And then I will tear this down into my paper that I normally use. So I always tear mine in half, and then I tear it in half again.
So I've gone and tore down all my paper, and as you can see, it gets these little jagged edges here. And the more I tore it, the more jagged the edges got. I mean, it does have little natural decals right here, but then this came out here. Now you can find tear bars, they're much thinner, that are decal tear bars that have a wave to the edge that help you tear like this. But this is what I use. And Stonehenge does have a, and let's see if you can see this here. There is an A side and a B side. There we are. Nope, doesn't like me today. So there's a slight tonal difference between these two areas. You can kind of see it. So that's not as pronounced. Some papers for theirs it is. So I normally print, it doesn't matter which side you print on. It's just one side is a little bit more textured than the other. And that's all it is. When it comes to any of their colored papers. Now, colored papers are archival from Stonehenge because they are my favorite paper. I do love using it. You can kind of hear the sound from it. It's a very stiff paper. It's very tough. And a lot of people like it and some people don't like it. It all depends on how you use it. And Stonehenge is one of those papers. If you're going to print with it, I highly recommend that you soak it. And I'm going to show you guys what I do to soak my papers. Now, like I said, when I'm editioning, and I use Stonehenge almost exclusively, it's my favorite paper, I do have to soak it. And to do that, I have, this is just a stay wet palette that I happen to have, but you can build your own paper soaking thing. I've seen people do it with big, thick, heavy pieces of plastic and put it in a cardboard box. Basically, all you need to do is have something like this filled with water. I'm going to fill this one up with water, as you can see. And I just take my paper and stick it into here. Like so. Side by side, the two pieces. And then give it a few moments and then make sure it all gets in there. Make sure water's on top. I just keep doing this over and over. I do all my sheets of paper this way. Now, normally when I'm editioning, I will do half my printing at one time. And I know my sheets, I broke it down into quarters, and then I broke it down into eighths. And so that means this is a 7.5 by, I believe, 11. Because it's 22 by 30. And so I know that normally I do about 3 to 4 sheets of Stonehenge. Normally that means editioning will be half. I'll tear it all down at once, but I will wait and soak everything. So if I normally do 32, I happen to know that's 16 sheets. Now I only did 3 sheets, so 8 times 3, which is 24. I am really bad with math. Yeah, 24. Which means 12 sheets. I'm going to soak 12 sheets of paper. I will never do all of that all at once, because I will get it gets too tedious. Now that I've let my papers, you gotta let your paper soak. You gotta let it soak for about Most people recommend like 20 minutes, 35 minutes. If I'm doing a proofing and I just need to soak paper real quick, I normally just run it right under the faucet, and then you can kind of feel the paper go limp. Like it loses that crispness. The crispness now. Like this. It will lose that. And normally I actually don't soak my paper for very long. I do 5 minutes typically. Now if I were using some etchings or something like that, I would soak my paper for very much longer, more like half an hour to 45 minutes, because that's what is needed for that. But for relief, I really don't need a lot. And then once you've soaked all your paper, what I like to do is this. So I'm going to move the paper off to the side here. And I get a squeegee, like so. And I get a towel. And since I know the bottom papers were the first ones in, I'm going to flip over my paper in the tray, like so. So that way the bottom are the first ones I grab. And I also have a little clear plastic baggie, and that's what I'm going to put my paper in. I'm going to shake it off a little bit. Then I take my squeegee like so and pull it out, and then squeegee the surface again, set the paper down, and do the other side. And then I will stick each one inside my plastic baggie, like so. And I will do this for all 12 sheets, or however many sheets I'm doing. Ziploc baggies also work well. They actually work a lot. They work really good. As long as it's sealed, or it can be sealed, it's fine. I'm going to do one more here. Show you guys again. Set the paper down. Pull the squeegee off. I mean, you can just wipe it down with a towel if you want. I just use a squeegee because I find it a little bit more helpful for me. I think it goes a little faster. And if they're really worried about it, you can also buy some blottering paper, which is a very inexpensive, highly absorbent paper. It's basically paper without any sizing in it, because this paper all has sizing in it. And I've done this before where I just scrape this off, and that, or I just squeegee it off the water. Oh, that one's got a little crease in it. That's still fine though. Well, I'll squeegee off the water, and then I'll just squeegee it straight from here onto the floor, and then I'll just let it dry up because it's just water. But then I'm walking in something that feels slightly sticky, because that's what sizing is. It's slightly sticking. Sizing is something they do. Two types of sizing: internal sizing and external sizing. Basically, internal sizing is something they add to paper to help control. It's sort of like when you look at a piece of Kleenex. If you ever tried to use a marker on a piece of Kleenex and just spreads all out, that's because Kleenex and paper towel and things like that are meant to be super absorbent. They have no form of sizing whatsoever in it. You can see the same thing with newsprint. If you use newsprint, where you put down an ink line and it just feathers out, and that's because it's the capillary action of the fibers in the paper are making it travel along the fibers. So that's what happens. Sizing is something they add to it to help control that so it doesn't spread out. And that's why when you see cheap printer papers and things that, you know, if you draw on them with markers, they tend to get fuzzy and hazy. While more expensive papers do not, because more expensive papers typically have sizing. Papers with the most sizing you're going to find are going to be watercolor papers, and those have internal and external sizing. Some papers still have external sizing, but basically external sizing is after they've made the paper, they take the paper and stick it into another tub of water with sizing in it to control it even more. For watercolor, that's very important. They don't do that often with printing papers. There's a few of them that have some sizing. There's a few of them that do different unique things. Arches has some unique papers that are used for very specific printmaking processes that are related to photography that you can buy special paper for, and it has special sizings made for that. So I'm going to go ahead and redo the rest of these, and I will see you guys in just a few. Alright guys, I just realized I made a grievous blunder. Not so much like in my work, but I told you that I soak my paper, and I never really explained why I do. Believe it or not, soaking your paper in water actually makes it more absorbent. It prints better. It does make the paper softer too though, so if you don't want to have texture, like some of this texture will show through on the paper, like so, but that is why I do it, is I soak the paper so that way it becomes much more absorbent. So I've got my paper in my clear plastic baggie right here. I have my guy inked up there. I'm going to figure out which side I want to use. I'm going to use, because it's, with Stonehenge, there's a side that's a little bit smoother than the other. It doesn't really matter which one you print on, it's up to you. Like I said, you can see an A side and a B side to it, and where there's a tonal difference, and when it's wet, it's less of a tonal difference, but I know I'm going to use the smoother side. I'm just going to set my paper on here. Use this. Got my parchment paper on there. That's going to work well. And then pull my proof. And if it doesn't look right, set it back down. Or pull my addition, I should say. A little weak right there, and it's okay to do this. Pull it up and add some more ink, because I obviously missed a little bit right there. And as you can see, here we are. You can see some of that texture right there, and a few little oddballs things, but as you can see, there we are. It looks good. It looks really good. So there's no problems here. And then I'm going to go hang this up on my custom made print drying rack. Alright everyone, so I have my print, and what I've done is a makeshift drying rack, and what I've done is I've used little eye screws and screwed them into the walls and then hung parachute cord across them. And then I put a bunch of binders clips on them, and that's what I was doing there, and that's how I did it, and that's how I like to do these. Just gonna climb on here. One here. One here. Move it all the way to the over. And then each print I do, I will come into my kitchen here and hang them up there, as you can see. It is a little hard to see them. You know, this is my kitchen, so there is other junk here. But as you can see, I will do that across the whole thing there. And sometimes this area is filled to the brim with prints. I've had it like that before if I work on multiple prints in a week or something. And I normally let them dry for about 2 weeks, typically. Because I use water-soluble oil. No, let's just do this. Because I use water-soluble oil, oil takes longer to dry than water-based relief inks. But the problem with water-soluble oil is the chemical they add to it actually slows down the emulsification time, so it takes even longer to dry. So you have to wait a little bit extra. And basically, it might be dry to the touch after a couple of days, but it's not completely set. I take about 2 weeks. I've done this experiment because I've colored some of my prints before, watercolor. And with this ink, if it doesn't take at least 2 weeks to set, or maybe quicker, depending on, I did use the cobalt dryer, so that may speed things up too, or that will speed things up. But you gotta be very careful and test it. It will not completely set for quite a while. But, you know, doing it this way and having, I was going to say, I lost my train of thought. But doing it this way and then letting it dry for 2 weeks, then I can put watercolor on if I so choose to. I'm not going to do that with these, but it might not actually be a bad idea for a second edition for this kind of stuff. But either way, that's how I typically do it. I let it dry for about 2 weeks, and then I sign it, you know, and then I put down my number, how many editions I have. I write down that number, and then I put the title in the middle, down at the bottom, and then sign my name, and that's my edition. And that's how I do everything, guys. So I'm going to wait till next time to see you guys in my next video. Bye. Everyone, thanks for watching my video. You can give me some much needed support by clicking the thumbs up down. That helps support me. Also, you can follow me on Instagram at Matt Pernak. The link will be down below. Also, finally, I do have an Etsy shop. You can purchase a print from me. You can just go to my Etsy shop. It's called Printing Pernak, or there's a link down below. Until next time, guys, thank you.